Hello, welcome back to Eternal Beta. I'm Scott Rowe.
And I'm Nathan Anderson.
This week we're going to talk about video streaming services. Some interesting articles about Netflix and about Roku, and also
Apple rumors as usual.
Apple rumors as usual. Yeah, I like Apple rumors. I have to admit I'm a little addicted to Apple rumors. So we're going to start off real quick and talk about Netflix. I know we've talked a bit about Netflix in the past, but what's kind of fascinating is that Netflix has had a huge influx of overall subscribers over the years, but things have dramatically changed since they changed their business model.
You mean the split between DVD and streaming, making those separate plans?
Right. So they're very strong business from a mailing perspective. Went to the streaming service, made them two separate services, and then they tried to just kind of combine them into one. That didn't really work, so they separated them again. But Netflix has had a very strong push, obviously, on the digital side of it to really to publish all of this content, make it available via the Netflix Instant service, which it's a solid service for what it is. But what's kind of hurt them recently is that it's become more and more expensive to offer up a lot of content. Their initial contracts with some of the major publishers expired. They had to renegotiate. Yeah, they had to renegotiate, cost that much more. So they've had to actually reduce the amount of content they have, especially in regards to newer movies and things like that, which has led to a few problems. One being overall kind of consumer satisfaction has decreased. There was a report by Consumer Reports that found that that 81% of over 15,000 respondents to the Netflix streaming service found that
it was one of the lower ranked. Even though 81% of people use Netflix, it came in 6th in overall satisfaction, with people like Vudu, iTunes, Amazon Instant Video ranking above them, which, like we were talking about, it's not really comparing apples to oranges. Amazon Instant Video and Netflix are really the only people that are, it's like, here's the library of stuff to stream. Everyone else is a la carte. It's like I can log into iTunes and I can pay $4.99 to rent a movie that came out last week. But that's half of what I'm paying for a month of Netflix use. It's not it's an entirely different model.
Yeah, I think Netflix has been kind of put into a bad position. I mean, quite honestly, because they do offer a very, very large amount of content, but people are looking for new movies and they just don't have them.
Yeah.
I like it because there's a ton of old TV series, even previous seasons of specific shows that I've really enjoyed watching on Netflix streaming, and it's been great. I mean, I like that. But I kind of go into it knowing I'm not going to be able to see the latest Mission Impossible movie 6 months after it comes out of the theater. It's just part of what the service is. But I don't think the vast majority of consumers get that.
No, and it's when you got DVDs and streaming at the same time, it's like you still felt like you had access to that.
Best of both worlds.
It's like, oh, I can get that, but that's on my disc. But now it's like if you have the streaming only plan, all that stuff's cut off, and it just seems like you're walking down the Target aisle and looking at the movies that are in the value section.
Right. The $5 bin.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, well, I was wanting to see Toy Story 2.
Again.
But, yeah.
So that was, it's kind of interesting. It's sad to see that they're kind of struggling a little bit. I do think they made a bit of a misstep in expecting consumers to really embrace this monumental change in their business model, and it just didn't work out that way.
Well, and they're the poster child of online streaming now.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the first and most successful. I mean, a few years ago, the CEO, when DVDs were still hot, they said they consider themselves a streaming company now. And so
Mr. Hastings made a statement.
Yes. And I mean, like the article said, a huge amount of people use it. I remember reading a few months ago that somewhere between 30 and 40% of United States bandwidth is dedicated to Netflix streaming.
Yeah, I had read up to 50% during primetime evening usage.
Wow.
Of total bandwidth was because of Netflix streaming.
And the other 45% is spam, right?
Well, at least for me, anyways. But another interesting thing about that is they haven't had the growth that they've expected, and part of it is because of this negative reaction. They were expecting to get 7 million new subscribers this year.
By year's end,
and they've only hit the last quarter is 420,000 or something like that in the last quarter. Well, if you take that times 4 quarters, that's nowhere near 7 million. And since they're now a publicly traded company, I don't know how that's going to look on the books and how that'll affect their stock price. It's been kind of hurt.
It's been hurting lately, although with their they announced earnings yesterday or day before, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they've returned to profitability.
Yeah.
Although only making $8 million on nearly $1 billion in total revenue. So.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy. That just gives you an idea, though. I mean, what bandwidth costs probably are for them, and the server load, and then all those
and
licensing.
Content acquisition,
the content licensing has to just be enormous, and we're not even talking about the latest movies.
No.
So it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty crazy. I do wish Netflix the best because I do think it's a solid service, but they definitely have an uphill battle in some ways.
Yeah.
In some ways. Another article that was actually on TechCrunch was about Roku. Now, Roku actually just finished a whole nother line of funding. They got $45 million. What's interesting about it is that a lot of that funding has actually come from major publishers like News Corp. Historically, Roku, if you're not familiar with it, is a set-top box, not that dissimilar to like an Apple TV. But the primary difference is they basically created a wonderful system that allowed developers to create their own channels that could be put in it. So if you have your own,
which is their word for an app.
Right, their word for an app. Exactly. It's like it's an app. So what's kind of fascinating about that, they've had a lot of smaller publishers being able to create their own channels and offer up all this free streaming content, and that's what a lot of the users of the Roku box historically have done. So they've implemented since then like HBO Go, so if you have an HBO subscription, you can watch that there, Amazon Prime,
Netflix. Hulu, all the big guys.
Right, but if you think about those are also services you can get from other devices. So like you can watch Netflix on an Apple TV or on an Xbox or other things too. I know like GE and some of the other major electronics companies have their own now streaming boxes similar to the Roku and Apple TV and things. But what's interesting about this is like the first time they've really started to go down the path of going after these major publishers as major content providers, which kind of puts them in a different position because historically they've really tried to engage with this grassroots effort and all these small-time publishers. Well, if they all of a sudden
and the people who are like looking to replace the cable box.
Right.
But yeah, now all these deals with cable companies, it's like it's positioning itself to becoming a supplement to it because it's like you can't use HBO Go without an HBO subscription, and that ultimately means stacking a cable subscription on top of that. And so it's a shift, to like play nice with all the people who have the big content. I mean, actually on that subject, that might be part of the reason that Netflix has some issues because Netflix is positioned as it's like they would love to say you don't need cable because you can have us. But all the companies who give the content, that's where they make a lot of their money is cable subscriptions. So it's a war there. Right. And with Roku's positioning as being a complement to what you already have, that could win better access to content, it seems, or potentially.
It could. It's going to be interesting to see how well Roku does over time. I mean, I do think it's a pretty solid device, and they have sold a ton of units. They're available in a lot of the big box stores.
They're inexpensive.
You can get them at Target. You can get them at Best Buy. Yeah, I think the base model is either $50 or $60.
I believe 50 to 100 they range from. So kind of impulse buy level for a lot of consumers.
I've thought about it on numerous occasions about buying one. In fact, I may at some point just to kind of give it a real test drive. But I don't know. I'm really just interested to see how much of this this high dollar content ultimately makes it to a device and how expensive it's going to be for the consumer to access it. Is it all going to be like the HBO Go model where you're going to need to have a cable subscription all of a sudden to use most of the channels on the Roku box? Yeah. Or are they going to be able to ad support it enough to make, say TLC comes up with their own Roku channel? Are you going to be able to pay for that a la carte? Or are you going to have to...
And I think a la carte's what a lot of customers want, and that's actually what Apple is rumored to be doing. There's talks of a supposed Apple TV, not just the little hockey puck they have, but like an actual television set.
Full high-def TV.
Yes, and what's supposed to differentiate it is an entirely new way of consuming your content. So saying, I want AMC, I want USA, and TBS, and boom, those are the 3 channels I pay for, and I get them, which would be huge. It's like, why pay $180 for all your DVRs and all that when you only watch 5 channels?
Which I'm kind of like that, to be honest with you.
Apple had their earnings call yesterday or the day before. I've said that twice now, but they were asked about the current Apple TV on the call, and they've sold 4 million units this year, which is up 167% from last year. And they have said that it's still considered a hobby product for them, but they're committed to it because they don't sell products that they don't think have value.
Right.
So the Apple TV right now could be wetting the waters for the full-blown Apple TV. What'll be interesting to see if this paid model comes to be true, if you'll be able to access it on both levels of device, expensive TV or a cheap set-top box.
Right, or if ultimately that'll make its way to the other devices, whether it be a MacBook. I mean, is it more of a service with hardware support, or I kind of wonder how they're going to roll it out. Plus, I mean, historically, people, cable companies have made major statements that the reason they can give you a good value on all those cable channels is because they've been able to bundle them together for value. But so I don't know. I'm kind of curious if I go out and I ultimately just subscribe to 5 or 6 channels, is it ultimately going to cost me more, or just like 10 or 20% less of what I'm paying now?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the most fascinating part to see how that pricing model really ends up working out, if they really truly can get down that path, which I hope they do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of tired of paying for a bunch of stuff I never even watch or don't find any value in personally. But cool.
It's going to be very interesting in the streaming business over the next few years, without a doubt.
And we'll be here to enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching. As usual, if you have anything you'd like us to talk about or have any comments about the show, tweet us at @Bozell.com, @ Bozell.com, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you.